Welcome to Lesson 6 and Unit 14, Change Over Time. In this lesson, students will work to answer the question, how do traits affect a living thing's ability to survive? In the previous lesson, students figured out that organisms have traits that are either inherited or influenced by the environment. In this lesson, students will use camouflage simulations to explore how traits might impact survival because they provide a particular advantage or disadvantage. Students figure out that some differences in individuals of the same species can make it easier for an organism to complete their life cycle by surviving and reproducing. This lesson is approximately 3 days. In the engage portion of this lesson, allow students to turn and talk for this series of probing questions. In the last lesson, we discovered which traits are inherited and which ones are influenced by the environment. Who can give an example of an inherited trait? Who can give an example of a trait influenced by the environment? Of the traits that are inherited, are there any that might help an animal survive and reproduce or complete its life cycle? Next, tell the students, look at this bag of colored toothpicks. Which of these toothpicks do you think it would be hard to find in the grass? Why do you think that? Discuss your prediction with a partner. For this activity, you will take the bag of toothpicks and spill them out on a white piece of paper. Lead a class discussion about what colors the kids see. Ask if they are easy to see and why. Have students count the number of each color of toothpick. Make a bar graph on the board to show the amount of each color in the boxes. Explain that these toothpicks are like insects. Though they are all toothpicks simulating the same type of organism, they have different colors or variation. You may want to compare this to the dogs in Lesson 5. Though the dogs had different fur colors, they were all still dogs. For another example, use the katydids from the unit phenomenon story in Lesson 1. Though katydids can be pink or green, or even orange and yellow, they are all still the same species of katydid. Next, you will take the students outside and toss the toothpicks out onto the grass. The students will pretend to be birds that hunt these insects, represented by those toothpicks. Spread them out so that the children can spread out when they hunt them. Give the students 30 seconds to locate as many toothpicks as possible. When the 30 seconds are up, the students go back inside. If the weather is inclement, use the floor or rug in the classroom or use a large piece of green-colored fabric. Whatever area you choose, make sure that it is a uniform color. In the explain portion of this lesson, give students a copy of Traits and Survival Data from student pages 14 through 15. The students should count their toothpicks and create a bar graph to show the amount of toothpicks found for each color. Discuss with the class the difference between the first bar graph that you do together on chart paper and their second bar graph. Ideally, the colors that are camouflaged will not be found, so there will be less of them represented on the graph. The students should write about the data they collected. They should think about these questions when they write on student page 15. What colors were easy to find? Why? What colors were not easy to find? Why? If these were real insects, which color insect would survive? Next, ask students, how does the data from our experiment connect to what we have learned about life cycles? Allow students to think, pair, share. The students may respond that the toothpick organisms that were easily seen would not survive, and possibly could not make new toothpick babies, so they could not complete their life cycle. Finally, ask students to share their conclusions that they wrote on their student pages. Students should have concluded that the experiment showed that some colors were better at hiding the toothpicks than others, and this allowed those toothpicks to survive more often. Ask students, how has what we learned in this lesson helped us figure out what is happening with the pink and green katydids? Students may respond that the pink katydids stick out more than the green katydids, so they did not survive and reproduce as much as green katydids, which seem to blend with the environment better. Just like in the toothpick simulation, some bright colors were still not found immediately, so some pink katydids were able to survive and reproduce. In this lesson, students use camouflage simulations to explore how traits might impact survival because they provide a particular advantage or disadvantage. Students figured out that some differences in individuals of the same species can make it easier for an organism to complete their life cycle by surviving and reproducing. This lesson sets the foundation for the final lesson, where students will consider how a whole group of organisms might change over time because of certain individuals surviving and reproducing.